Hey everyone, welcome to the Judge Psychology Speaking Style and Persuasiveness lecture presented by Mission San Jose Mock Trial. This lecture is a combination of what you've learned thus far in previous videos on our channel as well as upcoming ones, and this sort of puts together all of the skills and tips into one score sheet and how you should best present everything that you've learned thus far. So obviously the mock trial scoring attorneys are very experienced in evaluation and scoring, but in the end, they are people, and this presentation will show you how to win over these judges as people, as well as judges. So let's get to it. So first, let's talk about the components to a score. Scores are based on performance and not the legal merits of the case. Each team's performance is scored using a 10-point scale on a series of performance categories. Here, I've simplified the performance categories into 4 main ideas. The first of which is impromptu speaking, i.e., how quickly you can come up with a response and so forth. For pre-trial, it would look like how quickly you can respond to a judge's impromptu inquiry. For trial, it would look like how strong of a response you can come up with to objections by opponents. And for witnesses, it would look like a concise but non-concessionary response in cross-examinations. The second is case understanding, i.e., how much knowledge do you have of case facts and legal procedure? Again, let's break it down for every single position. In pre-trial, for instance, you look at how well you know the cases presented in the case packet, how you brought these examples from the case into your refutation, and so forth. For trial attorneys, it would look like how well you're able to reinforce your case narrative throughout examinations, but more on that in a later slide. There's also a much more detailed explanation of witness exhibits and case understanding in a separate slide, as well as a separate lecture later on also. The third is style and presentation. This is including eye contact, voice presentation, all of which will be discussed in further detail in 2 slides, I think. And lastly, we have presented content, i.e. in the pre-trial rebuttal, is it just flowery rhetoric or do you actually clash with what the prosecution or defense said? In these statements and examinations, is there substance in the content you're presenting? Or asking, and do you show the importance of showing what you're bringing up? Or is it just even more fluff and rhetoric? For witnesses, it would be, are the answers actually responsive or are you just trying to dodge the question and saying a bunch of random things? Okay, so scoring for each portion of the trial. Score sheets generally allow for individual and overall team performance. So in conclusion, the points consider civility, excessive objections, scripting, delay tactics, usage of exhibits, thematic presentation, and legal arguments woven into the presented narrative of the theme of the team case. With that being said, let's talk more about this slide though. Here we're looking at argument organization, which is prepared. If you demonstrate complete knowledge of relevant facts and related cases, you make on-point analogies, if you clearly distinguish unfavorable cases and refute the reason as to why they don't apply, and lastly, if you're able to answer questions from the judge directly and thoroughly and immediately, thereafter transitioning naturally back into the argument, then you would get awesome points. For the next part, which is on trial attorneys, for trial attorneys, you have to present clear, concise questioning that goes into the heart of the key issues, have proper objections followed, like where applicable, by strong argumentation, strong response to opponent objections, and minimal, if any at all, some reliance on notes. Definitely great to be memorizing. Finally, we have witnesses. For witnesses, scores evaluate your answers to questions in direct examination that reflect complete knowledge of facts, only conceding points on cross-examination where they have to, but without appearing obstructionist or unnecessarily wasting opponents' time. In the end, be clear, concise, and have persuasive rhetoric, but don't make everything all about fluff and no substance, right? We're also going to be releasing additional videos on witness inconsistencies and preparation, so be on the lookout for those as well to help this portion of the trial. But let's move on to the most important topic of today's lecture, which is on general speaking style and persuasiveness. Since most decisions are a mix of content and bias, you also need to be aware of how you are going to present all of this to the judge and say all of this great content. So the first thing that we're going to talk about is the attitude inside and outside of trial. Let's combine that with respect and confidence though, because both points are relatively similar. Even though the past year has been online, as we transition back in person, it is of utmost importance to always show professionalism and to not be annoying. In crossfire, or cross-examination, sorry, if you're getting frustrated, let's say the witness is being super annoying by dodging a lot of questions, or if on the other side of the spectrum, they don't seem very confident at all, and you're not getting what you want out of them, and it's being very frustrating. Don't be overly aggressive. Don't be cocky if this happens. Always be very chill and professional, but try to find ways to grill them content-wise without letting your frustration or whatever emotions show during questioning. Pro tip is to always be respectful to your opponents and judge whether the trial has started, it's during, or ended. Overall, communicate confidence and respect. A little snark is okay, but jerks definitely lose. Second, let's talk about speed. In a trial, principal arguments are everywhere, as legal arguments are often focused on contractual and moral obligations instead of more pragmatic arguments, which often means you need to do so much more in order to persuade the judge's morals, not only logically, but also emotionally. This means that there are two main things that you need to do. First, you cannot talk very quickly. If you talk very quickly, yes, perhaps, maybe not, the judge will be able to understand, but A, you sound like you're losing and you need to talk super quickly to compensate for all of the responses or all of the things that they have said that you're behind on. And B, it's also so much more taxing to hear someone go at top speed and try to take in all of that content. It looks really bad for you, especially if the other team is going at a very slow and relatable pace. The second is clarity when you speak. This looks like enunciating every single word so that everything comes across very clearly. And this also looks like emphasizing specific phrases or words that you think is important or you want to dramatize. Finally, let's talk about content and bias. I will say that performance probably takes a higher place in the scoring, but here's the reason why, right? Because scores are tired at the end of the day when trials occur in the evening, and they don't want to think about every single question, so make it a nice performance for them. Content is still immensely important though, with that being said. Like for content, the number one thing to remember is that attorneys need themes and narratives. They need greater repetition, so make sure you continuously repeat and weave in your story throughout the round, opening, cross-X's, DX's, closing, and so forth. Always aim for repetitiveness so that the content you want the entire judge to hang on to is so much easier to take in rather than just spewing a bunch of great content and then not really having the judge understand that. Okay, so the next slide is on speaking style and persuasiveness, the attorney edition. The first thing to recognize is that you need to have great resources and prep. You need to have an effective use of exhibits that you should have the ability to bring out of the most important facts throughout. Don't waste your time on a bunch of fluff and meaningless questions. The second point is about impromptu recovery. The judges place a huge emphasis on how memorized you are, how familiar you are with the case material, and how you allocate your time, and overall how adaptable you are. So obviously there's going to be at least some preparation for this, but also how you react to pre-trial debates that as well when evidence is included or excluded. The third is about performance. This is what, like I said before, this is one of the most important aspects that we already covered in the last slide. So I'll just skim it over really quickly, but you need appropriate objections and responses. You need to maintain credible composure and confidence, and remember to always be civil and professional. Never be a jerk, never yell, never get super emotional, even if you're feeling that way. It's just not professional, it loses you a lot of points. Fourth is about questions and answers. More on this later during lectures about direct and cross examinations, but judges also evaluate how you phrase questions and how they connect back to the storyline that you're trying to paint. All right, finally, we have speaking style and persuasiveness, witness edition. Everything goes about pretty similarly and applies to everyone, i.e. you must remain civil, polite, poised, and have appropriate courtroom decorum. Some nuances and differences that inevitably come with different roles that I wanted to point out is that you also need to have a thorough understanding of the case and the facts. It's not enough to know your character inside and out. You need to know the case inside and out. You also need to heavily prepare and understand and analyze the case with the attorneys, which subsequently would help you massively predict and prepare against what the opposing attorneys might want to say to you. Also, you're going to be judged on character portrayal and your ability to stay in character and not act like yourself. This also ties in with your impromptu ability, i.e. how fast you're able to answer a question adequately in character, how efficient you are in that response, and so forth. You really need to be thinking on your feet, and you really need to embody the person. And when you're thinking quick on your feet, embody what that person, what your character that you're playing is going to say. So I think that is all of the slides that we have for today. Thank you so much for watching.